Title: 15 Years in HMP Belmarsh, The Friend Who Found Redemption. Ethan Price and Jaden Cole were more than friends. Born 2 weeks apart, raised on the same East London estate, they were like twins who never left each other's side. From scraped knees on cracked pavements to whispered dreams in shared bunk beds, they grew up swearing they'd one day open a garage called E&J Motors. Ethan had the discipline, Jaden had the charm. Together, they were unstoppable, or so they thought. But where Ethan found routine in work, Jaden chased thrills. He started small, borrowing without asking, favors for older lads with expensive cars and shady motives. Ethan turned a blind eye, believing Jaden would snap out of it. By 2009, their lives had clearly diverged. Ethan worked as an apprentice electrician, taking care of his mom and younger sister. Jaden had moved into a darker world, but whenever they met, Ethan saw flickers of the boy he'd grown up with. One rainy night, Jaden knocked on Ethan's door, desperate. "One last job, bro. Just drive me. That's all I'm asking." Ethan hesitated, his gut twisted. But memories of shared birthdays, scraped football games, and the blood oath they'd made as teens clouded his judgment. He grabbed the keys. They drove in silence. Jaden seemed tense but masked it with weak jokes. When they reached a deserted alley near a high street jeweler, Jaden jumped out. "Back in 5. Keep the engine running." Minutes passed, then alarms, then sirens. Jaden never returned. Ethan panicked. He reversed, tried to leave, but was stopped by flashing blue lights. His prints were on the steering wheel. A CCTV camera caught a blurry figure in his car. He refused to speak. Not to the police, not to the solicitor. "I ain't a grass," he muttered. "Not ever." In court, his silence spoke volumes. Jaden never appeared. A crucial witness, Jaden's ex, who had evidence, refused to testify, frightened of retaliation. With insufficient alibis and overwhelming circumstantial evidence, Ethan was sentenced to 15 years in HMP Belmarsh. His first days were a nightmare. Concrete walls, screams in the night, fights in the yard. But worse than the noise was the silence. Ethan felt hollow, until he found an old notebook tucked into his belongings. It had survived the trial. He began sketching again, first faces, then memories. His cellmates mocked him at first. Then curiosity grew. One by one, they asked for portraits, tattoos, lessons. Even Malik, a feared, quiet inmate, asked him to sketch a picture of his daughter from memory. When Ethan handed him the drawing, Malik's hard eyes softened. From that day, Malik became Ethan's silent protector. Years passed. Ethan ran art classes inside. He helped other inmates write letters, design greeting cards, create gifts for their children. He became a quiet force for calm. Guards took notice. So did the outside world. In 2019, a podcast journalist investigating prison reform discovered Ethan's story. Interviews with guards, ex-inmates, and sketches mailed to families built a compelling narrative of a man who had transformed a sentence into service. Jaden, now in hiding and filled with guilt, heard the podcast. For years he had wrestled with demons, avoided the mirror, tried to outrun the truth. But now the truth had a name and a voice. He turned himself in. Jaden confessed in full, submitting a letter to the parole board, admitting Ethan's innocence and begging for forgiveness. The letter reached Ethan through Malik, who read it aloud. "I was scared. You saved me. I let you rot. I'm sorry, E. You always were the better man." Ethan stared at the floor for a long time, then picked up his pencil. At his next parole hearing, the board listened intently. Ethan didn't speak about Jaden. He spoke about the boys he mentored, the fights he stopped, the tears he saw when fathers drew birthday cards for children they hadn't hugged in years. When the board granted his release, no one in the room doubted he'd earned it. On a cool spring morning after 15 years, Ethan walked out of Belmarsh. Jaden was waiting. They stood still, no words, then tears, then a hug that said what words couldn't. 6 months later, E&J Motors opened in East London. Not just a garage, a mentorship space for at-risk youth, a sanctuary. They trained boys with rough pasts to fix engines, to write resumes, to believe in redemption. Above the office, a mural painted by Ethan showed 2 boys sitting on a rooftop, sketching stars. Loyalty had cost Ethan everything, but it had also forged something unbreakable, the power to heal, to forgive, and to build something that lasted far longer than pain. Because some friendships are more than history. They are hope reborn.